Good afternoon, everyone. Declare the meeting open. Please all stay seated. Because it's being live streamed, we have an obligation to read out the terms of the and conditions in relation to the live casting of this. I'll ask the GM to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This meeting is recorded and live streamed for public viewing via the internet in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, with the recording stored and made available to the public for later viewing. The recording is subject to copyright. Members of the public attending or speaking at this meeting will be recorded and publicly broadcast. By attending this meeting, you voluntarily consent to your attendance and participation being recorded. Any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be live streamed. Council requests that everyone present is respectful and uses appropriate language. Council does not accept liability for any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Please ensure that all electronic devices, including mobile phones, are switched to silent. Under the Code of Meeting Practice, public recording of this meeting is prohibited without prior authorisation by Council. Council's live streaming of meetings via Facebook is designed to encourage constructive dialogue. We remind users to be digitally responsible and respect their fellow posters. We ask users to keep comments relevant and not to spam or post personal or commercially sensitive information. This includes content that may be defamatory, derogatory, offensive or discriminatory towards council employees, councillors, other persons or organisations. Failure to follow Facebook house rules will result in comments being deleted, and if this behaviour persists, the user will be blocked.
Thank you. Can I ask you all now to be upstanding for the opening of the meeting? I'll do acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting on today and pay my respects to both elders past and present, and also that respect to any Torres Strait or Aboriginal people here today. And to open the meeting with prayer, welcome back Pastor Paul Crossman. And you mentioned in your prayers last week there was something about rain, and maybe those prayers are going to be answered.
Thank you, Lord. We do thank you for the rain we have received, but we continue to ask you for fire quenching and ground drenching rain for our district, for our state really, and for the east coast of Australia. We thank you that your hand is on us, your mercy has been great toward us. And for this council meeting tonight, we pray, Lord, that you would give these men who sit in governance locally today wisdom in the decisions and the debate that they undertake, so that the best outcome for our shire and for its people will be evident throughout our district. We ask your richest blessing in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, councillors. We have one item on the agenda tonight, being oh, yes, we better go through declarations of interest. We have no apologies. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Turland?
No.
Mayoral minute, there's nil. And we have the council report. We're in, and I'll be moving the recommendation from the chair.
Before you move the recommendation...
No, we're not doing... No,
I have a question, and
yes,
what I want to do also is I think we need a briefing from our Deputy General Manager in relation to the report.
Yes, we're doing that, Councillor
I'm just clarifying, and I'd also like to think that councillors would let Elizabeth Aiken speak in relation to this form that's been handed to us from the northern villages. We've had the southern villages discussion, and I believe we probably
Councillor
should have...
Turland, yes. Please. We are here to deal with the waiving of fees.
I get that, and it could have been done last Wednesday. The issue at the moment is...
Councillor Turland, will you resume your seat, please?
And for what grounds do you think I should sit down?
Because we are opening the meeting in relation to the item on the agenda, and it is to being introduced by Mr. Pepping.
Of which I've asked, and I've got a question after it.
Then everybody is entitled to questions.
Procedural question. Did we receive any notices, requests of a public forum today, or because again, I support Elizabeth Atkins speaking.
No, did we, any what? Sorry.
Any request for public forum today?
No, and there are no public forums at extraordinary meetings.
I noticed that that was excluded. And we've
No,
got a
it's
person
not
here who's lost her house.
Councillor
A local
Scandrett,
chaplain,
Count-
right? A
Councillor
president of an
Scandrett.
association. Yes, Mr Mayor. Oh, shame, shame.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. I'll ask Mr Pepping to introduce the item in relation to 6.1.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. The purpose of this report is to seek endorsement for financial relief to assist residents impacted by the recent bushfires within the Shire relating to fees and charges associated with development and related applications. At the extraordinary meeting held on 29 January 2020, Council resolved inter alia that following consultation with other New South Wales councils and the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, a detailed report be brought back to Council at its meeting on 12 February 2020, outlining relief options for development application and associated fees for residents who have lost their dwelling houses in the 2019-20 bushfire locations. And if you bear in mind that reference to dwelling houses, because that's important as I get into the presentation. This matter has now been brought forward given the state government has since announced a suite of state levies and charges, fees and charges, that it will waive for development and associated applications. Councillors, in the consultation that I engaged with other councils in New South Wales and the councils that I did contact, it was evident that they weren't making the distinction between dwelling houses and people who had lost outbuildings. So as a result of that, the recommendation that's before Council is to also include outbuildings in the waiving of all of those costs. So in reality, what it puts forward to the councillors is that all fees for all buildings that require a development application or a construction certificate and all the other fees will have a zero application fee. The other thing that's important to note is that following the state government's announcement on Friday about the waiving of state levies, the levies that have been confirmed as waived at this point in time is the Planning Reform Fund levy and the Basic Certificate levy. The all-important long service leave levy has not been waived officially at this point in time, and as a result of that, I have put another point 6 to the recommendation, which says that Council, pending the official confirmation that the long service leave levy has been waived by the state government, Council defer the payment of the long service leave levy when any construction certificate application is lodged with Council or a private certifier. So it will not mean that the applicant will be out of pocket in that when they do lodge their application. And there is action afoot to try and do that, but it does require a change in legislation. The other thing that I have done also in the recommendation to what was printed in the business paper is to confirm that this suite of fee and charge waivers are for those property owners who were the owners at the time that the bushfire took place. So if, for instance, a property owner was to sell a vacant block of land, the new owner would not be eligible for these fee waivers. So it's only the people directly impacted by the bushfires who will benefit from these waiving of fees and charges. Now, the other important thing is that this process needs to happen in terms of Council resolving, and for us to go out on public exhibition for a period of 28 days, because that is bound by legislation. The General Manager or staff do not have any authority in which to waive the fees, and that has to be a resolution of Council. So we've brought this matter to Council. Just so that the public is aware, and it's under section 610F of the Local Government Act, a council must not determine the amount of a fee until it has given public notice of the fee in accordance with the section. And then if I move down to subsection 3, however, if after the date on which the operational plan commences, which is usually the 1st of July of a financial year, a new service is provided, or the nature or extent of an existing service is changed, or the regulations in accordance with which the fee is determined are amended, the Council must give public notice in accordance with Section 705 for at least 28 days. If Council adopts the recommendation tonight to waive all the fees which are listed from A through to N, the public notification period will commence on the 10th of February and conclude on the 9th of March. If there are no objections received by Council, my recommendation to Council is that the General Manager be delegated authority to implement those immediately. However, if we do receive an objection, and for whatever reason that objection may be, it will need to come back to Council for formalisation. And of course, we will do that to the first available meeting in March. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Council's question. Councillor Turland.
Yeah, I'm going to flag, as we move on here, we have another fee that hasn't even been thought of by the government. It's called homeowner warranty. It's a tax that they collect from the builder, and it's double the amount of the long service leave. So you probably don't know much about it, but being a builder, I understand it. It's a cost that has to be borne by the government again for people who've been fire affected. Can we add that into it? It actually said here, the council, depending on the official confirmation, it's the same thing with the homeowner warranty, and you're talking double the money.
We can certainly add that Council seek clarification on the status of the...
Number 7, whatever you wish to do, if you'd like to put that in, that would be very kind.
Do that.
So the wording will be, we'll get the wording up, Councillor Turland. So, and just before, while we're going on to other questions, there has been I don't know how many people have the business paper that was printed, but as Mr. Pepping said, there is now a 0.6, because last week there was an additional item to the recommendation, and some media didn't print that, which was very important. So just make sure, if whoever in the media, that you make sure that we get a copy to you that is the resolution of Council. Councillor Scandrett, question?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Actually to you, if that's all right. In the minutes of last week's meeting, as you know... No, it's relevant to this. Just let me speak, if you wouldn't mind. E, tree removal at Balmoral and Wingelow, etc., 225,000. As we know from yesterday's briefing from the State Coordinator, Dick Adams...
It is not on the agenda.
Therefore, my question is there any reason this is not on the agenda to update the public that has been entirely removed from the obligation from the federal funds?
No, this is to deal with the item that is before us. It's nothing to do with that.
You don't want to add it in as a note?
No, there is, unless there is an addition, as Councillor Turland has suggested, which is relevant to fees and charges, then no. Thank you. Questions to Mr. Pepping? No further questions. Then I will move the recommendation from the floor with the additional two that Councillor Turland has suggested, and that will be that Council seek clarification in relation to the waiving of the fee is called the Builders...
Homeowner warranty levy, is that what?
Homeowner warranty. Thank you, Councillor Turland. That's a good suggestion.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor McLaughlin. Speakers for, I will, seeing I'm moving it, and I commend the staff for their research in relation to this. It is just a shame that in the last 5 days that the state government officially announced that they would be removing or waiving the long levy fee, which, if you read in the report, is going to be worth millions and millions and millions of dollars to fire-affected shires. It is a great recognition from the state government to councils that this levy be waived. There has been an enormous amount of pressure put on councillors and myself, but I believe by waiting that extra time, we have got an outcome that is going to save the ratepayers from having to pay this long service levy to the state government. Now, as Mr Pepping has said, there is going to require legislation changes for that to take effect. Everything takes time, and this is while people who have lost their homes still haven't been able to put in a DA, are still suffering, they're still living with family or friends or rented accommodation, and they will be for probably another 12 months to 18 months. And that is something that we do have to continue to bear in mind. And it is a shame to a degree that politics seems to have come into play, and that I'm disappointed about. And I believe the council is still doing and leading other councils in relation to this. And if you read the report, the only council that has waived the levies, DA fees and charges is the Shoalhaven. The other councils, Eurobodalla and Bega, are yet to determine their position. Wallandilly has. They had a loss of 15 homes and they felt they could absorb that quite okay. And I understand Katoomba as well, and they have lost 4 or 5 houses, I think. So all in all, I believe this, although it's been painful and I know people are hurting, and there's still going to be more criticisms coming of council and state and federal governments, that it is such a huge disaster that we have to take breath and we have to make our decisions in a balanced and rational way, so it doesn't become emotional, and we can work with the community for the best outcomes. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, I had to go to Sydney today, physiotherapy, and ran into a builder there from Bega. And he did say to me, Mr Mayor, that Bega Council hasn't approved anything in regard to the DAs, and the residents are getting restless down there, Mr Mayor. So anyway, look, I stand here tonight to thank the staff in particular for the report that's before us. It's informative. It allows council to make an informed decision in relation to waiving DA fees and the charges. So having regard to items 1 to now item 7, because Councillor Tuddenham has Turlin. I keep getting you
going back a few years.
I apologise for that.
Oh, he was a good councillor.
We should apologise a lot more around this table, by the way.
I will.
Anyway, having regard to items 1 to 7, show that it was prudent for council to defer this matter to today and get it up to date and correct information, or get up-to-date correct information. So thank you for that. But it was disappointing that a few people took exception to the decision because I did move the amendment last week and posted Facebook comments and got back to me about that. I responded to all those people that objected to me and I provided a lengthy outline of the reasons why I suggested that we should defer and wait for a report from staff, and I think I'm vindicated in the report that's before us. So the people that I responded to, they must be happy because nobody's come back to me, Mr Mayor, so I'm happy about that. I was pretty disappointed though that our local MPs moved a Facebook item that commented against council, calling us, get ready, get going, get moving, approve DAs. Well, Mr Mayor, I thought we worked together with our MPs, you know, to get the right solutions, which is before us tonight, and that's what we do here. The councillors work together. We should be our MPs should be working with us, and we working with them, so that we do get the right solutions before us. So I'm supporting this motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Turlin.
Well, firstly, I want to apologise to the people who've lost their houses and what performance was last Wednesday. I apologise to you guys for that and our council where we lost the rails of that. The second one I'd like to apologise is to the staff who've done an enormous job, and they've been affected by our performance here last Wednesday and before that. So I hope that the council staff will accept the apology, and I hope other councillors follow suit and apologise for what happened last Wednesday. Now, in relation to this whole issue, it started with one word: waive DAs for people who didn't have insurance. It should not have got there. That was not our decision. It was somebody else's decision. And that's where it lost the rails straight away. Because if it was a council decision, we wouldn't be here now. We would have dealt with it last week and even earlier. Now, the other council areas had said they were going to waive fees. Everybody's moving so quickly. And we could have done that in principle. As the same statement made about only four people without insurance, we could have made the same statement that we're going to diligently look through the process, and I hope all councils will waive those fees. The long service leave was a cloud. It was a story that came behind after. 1/3 of the cost of any of these houses is a long service leave. 2/3 is council's fees. So the long service leave should never have been involved. The government was coming through its process. Everybody's trying to move so quickly and pull this whole disaster together because there's not been a disaster like this before. But the long service wasn't the issue. It became the cloud to make it the issue, and it wasn't. It wasn't. It never was. And the politicians had said, do the right thing. We had the opportunity last Wednesday to do the right thing, and we could have altered the motion. But other councils went in, listened to a tape recorder, I understand, that's been reported by the Mayor on 2ST about a malicious phone call which got back to the same person in Telegraph. That's what you said.
No, not malicious, sorry, thank you.
I listened to the tape, 2ST. It should never have come into it at all. So now we have councillors that have listened to a phone call, it seems, that should never have been listened to. It's private. We started another Pandora's box. So we are here now, and it's great that we finally got here. We didn't need to get here through this drawn process. And to wait for other councils to say they were going to waive fees, they were all going to waive fees, politically, emotionally. They had to eventually. But to think it was going to cost this community money, there would be not one person in this community that would not pay a few dollars to help those people who've lost their house. Not one. But we never gave them a chance. We never asked them, because we thought we were bigger than them. We thought we could make the decisions. It's not it's their decision if they were prepared to pay. So, as I said, I apologise for last Wednesday on behalf of myself, even though I wasn't part of the yelling match. And I apologise to the staff, which they shouldn't have been involved in this whole mess that we've got ourselves into.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. Councillor Halstead?
Quick. Yes, well, naturally I support that motion, and just make the point that this could have all been done last week, irrespective of the comments that have been made about staff doing this, that and the other. I find the whole thing quite amazing. And the fact that Councillor Nelson stands there and says the state government have been stuck, and I think you might have even inferred that, Mr Mayor, there was never a doubt that the state government would be making decisions of a state basis relating to both DA fees, and I'm hopeful of the other one as well, which you know I made submissions on, which was the 10 working days, which is absolutely doable, and you know that. Think about the 85 fires. Well, I'm not too sure you're aware of them, but that's how long it took to process them, 10 days. The town planners probably think that's amazing. No, it's not. But that phone call that you did state, I am told, malicious, I'm amazed about a phone call could be described as malicious, but I don't know. But I'll tell you what, if you listen to a video last week, or a recording of a phone call that was made by somebody into this council, you have breached, I can assure you now, the Surveillance Devices Act 2007 New South Wales in no uncertain terms.
I disagree.
Oh, well, I'm well aware of what the law is, and
So
I'm
am I.
quite convinced, Mr Mayor, and I don't need to be told by you what the story is, I'm debating, not you, and that is that a breach of the law has occurred, in my opinion, and I think that's a very serious issue, that someone's private phone call into this organisation was listened to by councillors and staff when they had no authority to listen to it. That's that issue. Now, in terms of the behaviour over a whole lot of statements made by yourself in particular, I think there's been almost a lack of empathy. Not too sure there'd be sympathy, hopefully both. And the behaviour's been reprehensible. It's one of Fraser's comments I like. Reprehensible behaviour speaking on our behalf when no approval was ever given. I suggest if you look at the appropriate section in the Local Government Act, I don't think you have any approval whatsoever, or did have approval to speak on our behalf on issues unless they were carried by this council, which they were not. So I'm not here to be negative, other than to say I'm disgusted with some of the stuff that's happened, and this did not get carried last week, because it's very clear that this is exactly where it was going to go, and I'm quite surprised it's back tonight. I wonder what prompted that. You can almost work it out. Just unbelievable. But anyway, it's supportable now, and it should have been done last week, and hopped on the bandwagon, I'm sure now that there's been pressure applied, and I'm very annoyed about the whole thing. I'll certainly apologise on behalf of the whole council, although I wasn't part of it. I wasn't part of the 6, nor did I listen to the tape last week, and I'm glad I didn't, because I wouldn't have if I'd have been here. But I'll just leave it at that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, and no, there was no breach. Councillor Scandrett.
Yes, Mr Mayor, well, I was one of the 3 that didn't support last week, and I'm still very comfortable with that decision, because my motion at the time said very clearly we can cover some of these costs from reserves, because the state will step up to the mark. And guess what? It did. So here we are at Groundhog Day. Same old, right? And you have been kicking the state government. There's no other way to look at it. No other way to look at it, right? And I think that's inappropriate. It's like your comments about the ashtray in relation to Nathaniel Smith, who's worked damn hard on this, as has Wendy Tuckerman. Damn hard. I mean, this is, you talk about a partnership, and yet you go out saying we need more money, and you know that this money, as has been pointed out here, was going to come through the pipeline anyway. And some of us spoke about that last week. I'm uncomfortable with how
I'm uncomfortable with... Don't make up stories, please.
I'm not making up stories. Tell me, did you listen to the tape? Did you listen to the tape of the caller here? Yes or no?
Yes, I did.
You did. Thank you. There it is. It's on the tape. I don't believe how that happened. Look, quite frankly, that should be referred, that should be investigated. I'm totally in agreement.
Oh, for goodness sake.
We were embarrassed, some of us, last week by your treatment, Mr Mayor, of the public. Right? And I certainly agree with Councillor Housestead and Turlin today in terms of the staff. I'd like to recognise the staff's hard work out in the field and on all these matters. But here's the documents that were submitted from the northern and southern villages, which I raised last week and asked that they be considered. And today I'm going to table these, right, so that we can say that we've we've addressed the request by the Balmoral Association over here, and the representative from Balmoral has first-hand knowledge of the fires herself. And she's sitting there in an RFS uniform. And of course we also had the Wingelow group down here. And none of that was addressed. And yet they're the people that have been on the news, they've had all the attention, and so on, rightly so, from state, federal and also non-political people. I mean, even the cricket visit down to Winslow, it's fantastic. Showing support, showing compassion, showing empathy. Well, you haven't done that, Mr Mayor.
In your opinion, Councillor?
In my opinion, and I think a lot of others, Mr Mayor, just listening to the public. On the fees and charges, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scandal. Councillor Markwart.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We've come here today to talk about one matter, to resolve one matter of the DA fees, and that's why I came here. Yes, all I'm hearing mainly is bickering again. The last meeting, extraordinary meeting, wasn't very pleasant. There was a lot of bickering and, I have to say, infighting between councillors. I'm not going to apologise for my behaviour. I think the councillors who are doing the bickering need to do the apologies, and I think they should think about that long and hard. I will be supporting this. This is clearly in the benefit of the community, and I think deferring it 1 week cost nothing, but it gave us certainty. We here are looking for certainty and making a decision which is well thought out and well researched. Responding to things like the Daily Telegraph and a few Facebook things is not the way that this council should make decisions. It is too important, we must be responsible to look after our community and not just run around and say do this and do that. We have to do our homework, and we can't do our homework if we spend all our time bickering. So I ask the councillors that are spending their time bickering, have a good hard look at themselves and think about doing some work. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Whipper.
So 100% agreement with Councillor Markwart. It's a shame that we're not unified again tonight, in spite of the fact that some, what can I say, misgivings were put out into the community that there were certain councillors that voted against the waiving of DA fees, which quite clearly was wrong. This will be a unanimous vote tonight. What I remember the outcome of that vote was that we were deferring pending further information. We've received that information. Thank goodness we got it earlier than later, and based on that we're making an informed decision. But even then, as Councillor Markwart is saying, we still want to create something out of nothing. This should be a good news story, and yet people are using the platform for opportunism. I find that disturbing. I find that quite, well, I find it very uncomfortable to think that people would exploit opportunities like this around the table to have a go at fellow councillors, because we all should work together. The staff have been doing an amazing job out there, we know that. In terms of support and empathy, we know the staff, a lot of staff have gave up their time over Christmas. They were out there on the ground and they were working very hard. We know, Mr Mayor, that you were out there as well on the ground, and we know that each of us as community members, knowing people that were affected by the fires, had our hearts and our minds in solidarity with those people. And I'd like to think it's that solidarity that we could echo here in this chamber. So tonight, I'm glad to see that this will be a unanimous vote, and we should leave it at that. Nothing else needs to be said. I think the ayes will have it, and that sends a clear message that we are in support of this community.
One of your best speeches, Councillor Whipper. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I mentioned last week that I believe that it was proper and sensible and the right thing to do to put this matter off onto the 12th. It's come forward a week. Council was always going to act in a similar fashion as we are about to do tonight. It was the right thing to do. We weren't aware of where the state or federal governments were moving on this matter, on the matter of DAs. We were going to question insurance. All that's been done in a week, less than a week. And I commend the Mayor, and in particular the staff, on being able to produce this document in 7 days. As I mentioned, Council was always going to move on this matter. We're all subject to criticism and bordering on abuse at times, probably most weeks of the Council term. We cop that, and we're expected to cop it, but to suggest that this council, and I'm talking on behalf of all councillors, lacks compassion is totally untrue. And the people that are pouring this on Facebook almost every day, it's wrong. We feel strongly about the effect that these fires have had on the community and the people behind me and all those that are not here tonight. And it's just wrong. And some of the people close to us here that follow under Facebook pages where it could have been removed, hasn't been removed, and that disturbs me terribly. Lack of compassion, bordering on, I can't think of the word, but it should never ever happen. I don't even think we should have debated this tonight. I didn't expect there to be a debate. It should have just flown through with the motion being moved, the recommendation being moved and seconded, and all hands up within 10 minutes we go home. It should have been, and it will be, a good story, but it should have been better than it is. I've watched council for the last 12 years. Tonight, in my opinion, and I get an opportunity to express it now, we've gone back 5 years. This wasn't and should never have been a platform for fellow councillors to have potshots at other councillors. And that's what's happened here in 3 occasions. There was nothing productive in what they said in regard to this. We're doing something terrific for the community and probably not enough. And I would hope that in future weeks that we might be able to do more. But to criticise fellow councillors here, and we all feel terribly sad about this matter, was wrong. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. No further, then I'll have my right of reply. And Councillor Andrews has raised a point. Last week, we gave away $1 million, well, not we distributed $1 million on behalf of the federal government. I don't think one councillor referred to that amount of money. Not one project, it was all personal attacks. In the biggest crisis that this Shire has ever faced in relation to fire, all we could do was have a go at each other. Hasn't changed or altered tonight. The level of changes, people said, well, why don't you just waive DA fees? It ain't that simple. It's not that simple. It has to go out on exhibition for 21 days. It's a change of policy. More haste, less speed. To do it once, do it well. And if we're going to do this, and I believe that we will be leading the rest of the state virtually, because we are doing it in a different manner, and we will be looking at the long service levy, and as Councillor Turlin said, the builder's contribution. So that is one more step. That wouldn't have been done last week. That wasn't mentioned last week. The other thing where we, and I thought could have been done, and I've been howled at because I spoke my thoughts, and it's not on behalf of council, it's my thoughts. Only when a resolution is passed am I the spokesman. But the insurance companies, some insurance companies I believe will get off free, because part of the DA for some insurance policies will be the insurance companies picks up the DA fees. And I just hope that those people who are covered fully put the pressure back onto their insurance, say, I've been insuring for you for 20 years. My policy says you will pay my DA fees. Will you contribute that to council as your contribution? And that is one area that I felt that we could pursue. The official advice, and this is why I have tried to take it slowly, it would be too complicated. We went to Wallandilly, who did that. They tried to, and they just said, nah, it's too difficult. The Privacy Act of making people bring along their insurance policy and show council and say, my insurance doesn't cover this or my insurance does, is an invasion. I'm going to conclude by saying, for people to say that I have no empathy or no feeling in relation to this, you weren't here, and I never saw one of you for the 3 weeks, and I've had 2 days off since 11th of December. Once for Christmas Day and once for my grandchildren's birthday last week. That's my 2 days off. So to say I have no empathy and I haven't been performing or trying to do what I can, then I can assure you I have. Do I believe politics should come into disasters? No, I don't. No way should politics come into a disaster. And Councillor Whipper, who spoke very eloquently on that tonight, he's disappointed. I'm disappointed as Mayor, and I am disappointed to see how some sections have attacked council and attacked members of the staff and members of elected community representatives. Thank you very much, and I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please raise your hand. For the record, it is carried unanimously. Unless there is anybody voting against, I didn't see that. Thank you. One of the very few unanimous votes we've had. There is no further business on the agenda. As such, I declare the meeting closed.